Anika's writing grounds the supernatural with humor and emotional truth. Her work is spooky, funny, deep, and overall still funny. That's all I got, sorry. Anika!
Andrew asked me to write a story that was spooky themed for Friday the 13th, and this is what I came up with. 1-800-NO-GHOST. Thank you for calling the Paranormal and Psychic Disturbance Hotline. If this is a life on the brink of death situation, please hang up and dial 911. If you have been experiencing migraines, numbness or tingling, blackouts, excessive nosebleeds, tinnitus, constipation, diarrhea, or astral projection as a result of the recently recalled prescription ghost blocker, please dial 1 at this time. For all other inquiries, please stay on the line. The phone rang 6 times before the 20-something-year-old in the checkered shirt and round glasses finally answered. There had been a sudden boom in the undead industry, and interns were needed 24 hours a day to tell children that the monsters under their beds were most likely misplaced tube socks, or to remind frantic parents that the early signs of possession were very similar to those of indigestion. This is Trevor. I will be assisting you tonight, he croaked. His vocal cords had barely made it out of puberty. Yes, hello. I'm sorry to be calling so late, but this simply will not do, she said. From her voice, Trevor guessed she was in her 60s and calling from a broom closet. That's all right, ma'am. The PPDH is at your disposal any time of day. May I ask you a few questions? Trevor read from a clipboard. 9 times out of 10, he didn't make it past the 3rd question. Yes, I suppose that would be all right, the woman sighed. Trevor smiled crookedly at the red-headed intern to his left. She had been talking to a man that was convinced John F. Kennedy was living in his body part-time. Every other weekend, he said, like a deadbeat dad. The woman on Trevor's line grunted impatiently. Thank you for your cooperation, Trevor began. What is your name, age, and religion? He opened a bag of pretzels slowly, scrunching his face to mask the splitting plastic. My name is Mary Regina Peck, 65 years old. The last one is complicated, you see, because I was raised Catholic, but only until I was 7 years old, at which point, even after receiving the Holy Communion, I told my mother that the church wasn't for me, and her being less of a God-fearing woman and more of a whatever floats your boat kind of woman didn't make me go back. That's not to say I don't say my prayers every night, but only Our Father and Hail Mary, on account of the fact that I don't remember any of the other ones, but my grandmother, okay, yes, fine, thank you, Mary, Trevor blurted, checking the Catholic part-time box on his form. I'm sorry, but when I get nervous, I talk a lot. That, or I don't talk at all. Next time I call, not that I want there to be a next time, of course I don't. I may be quiet as a mouse. So what's your next question? Mary said, coughing into the phone for punctuation. Right, Trevor said. Have you in the last 24 hours participated in any of the following activities? Held a seance in a graveyard? Used a Ouija board purchased at a yard or estate sale? Been to a funeral, after which you felt a cold sensation, followed by a bloating feeling and the sudden onset of memories that were not your own? Entered a haunted house with previous knowledge of the site's documented disturbances? Entered a haunted house without previous knowledge of the site's documented disturbances? Watched a horror film and at any point thought, there's no such thing as ghosts? Or taken prescription ghost blocker? Trevor sped through the list, having grown accustomed to the fact that, whether they were in the midst of a spiritual crisis or in the throes of ordering a pizza, people would always come up with something that wasn't on the menu. No, nothing like that, Mary said. I mean, I have ghosts, but not on account of any wrongdoing or hocus-pocus that I did or that someone else did to me. Okay, Mary, we'll get to specifics soon, but first I need to finish my questions. It's mandatory. We ask that, if further investigation is required by our staff, you, the caller, must undergo a series of psychological tests before we may proceed. Do you agree to submit to testing? There was silence on the line. Trevor shoved a handful of pretzels into his mouth, covering the receiver as he chewed enthusiastically. He jumped at the sound of Mary's voice. You haven't even heard what I gotta say and already you think I'm crazy? Well, isn't that rich? I thought you folks were supposed to be open-minded to this sort of thing. That I could say I had a ghost living in my damn toilet and you'd come running. Well, my grandfather said there are two types of people in this world. Those that drink the Kool-Aid and those who make it. So I guess I don't have a choice, do I? Mary was breathing heavily, waiting for Trevor to finish chewing. Most, Trevor started, before taking a swig of Hawaiian punch. The irony, he thought. Sorry, he said. Most situations can be taken care of over the phone. Further investigation is rarely necessary. One more question, Mary. You're doing great. Yes, fine, she said. Is this your first paranormal or psychic disturbance, or do you have a history of such occurrences? Trevor eyed the mini calendar on his desk, a gift from his supervisor. A cartoon ghost holding a pint glass said, I'm just here for the booze. Well, young man, I wish I could tell you this was my first time at the rodeo, but I've been living with ghosts my whole life, mostly on account of my mother. She calls herself a ghost magnet. You ever hear of a woman taking her kids for a picnic in the graveyard so she could bring home some spooks? We even lived across from a graveyard once. She was in heaven then, Mary said. It's actually quite common for one's curiosity about the supernatural to take precedence in one's life. Would you say your mother's interest would be better categorized as obsession? Trevor said, suddenly feeling like a psychologist and not an underpaid ghost fanatic who still had no idea what he was going to do with his life. Would you call a bird's desire to fly obsession? No, it flies because it's got wings, son. My mother just accepted what she was, and it didn't matter if her kids could fly too. She was always telling these stories. I couldn't go in the basement my whole life on account of a rubber glove. My mother said she was just a kid doing laundry, and there it was, all fingers moving and coming toward her. My fingers get all pruny when I do the dishes because I won't have those things in my house. Then there was the dead family that visited her room every night on Juniper Avenue. A dead family that just stood at the foot of the bed and watched her sleep. Can you imagine? Turns out the father shot the mother and daughters before shooting himself. When bad things happen, they just stay there, collecting dust, Mary said, her voice turning to a whisper. Yes, Trevor said, I know what you mean. But let's get back to you. Tell me about the disturbances you've experienced. Trevor felt suddenly cold. He put the phone on speaker so he could pull on his gray cardigan. Mary's voice boomed, causing all the other interns to swivel their chairs in his direction. Oh, well, how much time do you have? I tell you, son, if I had a nickel for every time there was a ghost in my house, I'd have enough to buy you a soda. The other interns laughed, as Trevor brought the receiver back to his ear, blushing. The red-headed intern was particularly amused. I see, he said. Please continue. Mary cleared her throat. You see, the farmhouse I grew up in was like a museum, but instead of art, we had all the people that ever lived there, and sometimes they were on display and sometimes they weren't. Most of them stayed in my mother's bedroom because she understood them, and I think that made them feel like maybe they weren't dead. Not really. There was the little boy with the freckled face. My mother said he died so young on account of pneumonia. There was the pine closet that opened up on its own. I swear to you, I watched that latch pop up and that door swing open all by itself, all the time. Maybe that little boy lived in there. I don't know. There was the mean ghost that put his hands between my mother's legs when she was sleeping, but he was only a shadow. I think the ones with the dark souls can never truly be seen. They're sneaky that way. There was the ghost that was just a head bobbing around, calling our names. There were other houses with other ghosts too. There was the one that smoked cigars. I never much cared for that smell. One of them liked to jump out from the bathroom, and he was nothing but a black cloud. Do you know what it's like having to pee in the middle of the night and have a ghost at the front of the line? It's worse than using a porta potty in the dead of summer, Mary said, breathless at this point. That's quite a list you have there, Trevor said. Well, let's get back to the reason you called tonight. Trevor watched as a group of interns took a break in the conference room, exchanging quips about that night's calls. She was there, gesturing wildly and laughing unapologetically. He had the holy grail of callers on the line and couldn't wait to get in there and for once be the most interesting guy in the room. After that, he would ask for the red-headed intern's number. That's the problem with your generation, Mary said. Y'all have the attention span of a gnat. Indulge an old woman just a little longer, would you? Most of the interns had wandered back to their swivel chairs. The phones never stopped ringing. Of course, Trevor said, clearing his throat. Your call is very important to us. There was a click on the line, and for a moment he thought Mary hung up, and the running joke that had been his night would have no punchline. You hear that? He was listening. He's always listening, because he has nothing else to do but haunt me. But I'll get to him in a minute. Now I could call you every night this week, and you still wouldn't know everything I've experienced. But the ghost I really want to tell you about, besides the one I really called about, is the time I was at the Piggly Wiggly. My mother and grandmother had gone in to do the shopping, but I stayed in the car. Times have changed, Trevor. Back then, you could leave your 5-year-old in the car with the doors locked so she could go about the business of being a kid without having to worry about someone taking her. But you can't do that now, can you? Anyway, there I was talking to myself and looking in the rear-view mirror, and all of a sudden, sitting behind me is this woman. It all happened in a few seconds, but I'll never forget her. She was a much older woman with white hair cut short, and her skin was just as white as her hair, white like a powdered donut. Her mouth was thin and red, the same red as her sweater. Glasses that were a little big for her face, but she was still a very nice-looking lady. She just stared at me as I stared at her. I didn't know her, but somehow I knew that she knew me. Then when I turned around, she was gone, Mary finished. That must have been very confusing for you, Trevor said, taking his glasses off and rubbing his eyes in circular motions. The night had grown long and heavy like a cloak, and all he wanted to do was wrap it around his body and take a nap. No, Mary said, life is confusing. Death is pretty simple, actually. Ghosts have always made sense to me. Trevor replaced his glasses and sat up straighter. Yeah, he said, you have a point there. Now, are you ready to tell me why you called? Yes, I suppose it's time. The real reason I called is to tell you that my husband is haunting me and I need your help. He never talks to me, but I feel cold when he brushes past me, and I see him bright as day. He goes missing at night. I like to think he sleeps on the downstairs couch, but maybe he goes somewhere else completely. Maybe he's getting ready to finally leave, Mary said. I see. You say you feel cold as he walks by, but do you actually feel the sensation of touch? Can you touch him? Trevor's voice raised and pitched slightly as his excitement grew. Yes, but he doesn't like it. He turns away when I touch him. Did I tell you my daughter sees him too? He actually talks to her, but then again, they were always close. She sits with him in the kitchen and they whisper. My daughter was never the type to believe in anything she couldn't see, but I think her dad being a ghost has changed that. Sometimes they even leave the house together. Poor thing. She's probably the reason you won't go, Mary sighed. Trevor heard her slump into a chair or against a wall. So your daughter could corroborate your story? That's excellent, Mary. I think you could get some real traction on this, but first I need to make sure you've tried everything within your power to get the spirit to leave. Have you done any of the following? Burned sage, sprinkled holy water, confronted the spirit and asked him to leave, or consulted with a medium, priest, or other type of holy figure? Yes, everything, Mary said. Her voice seemed smaller and further away. All right then, when and how did your husband pass away? Trevor pulled a new form up on his computer and placed his fingers on the keyboard ready to strike. That's the thing, Mary said. I don't know. Trevor paused for a moment, absently hitting the D and the K in a steady rhythm. You don't know? Is your husband's death under investigation? For once, the red-headed intern was eavesdropping on his call. He had her now. No, son. What I mean is, I don't know when he dies. One day I woke up and he was a ghost, Mary said slowly. When Trevor first started working for the PPDH, his training consisted of a series of role-playing scenarios. There was protocol for demonic possession, poltergeists, the Messiah complex, your run-of-the-mill fear of the dark, and special instructions for how to help people confidently enter their basements and attics. In one script, he had to console a woman who was convinced her husband wasn't dead. He told her death comes for us all, and many believe her husband is in a better place, and that prescription ghost blocker was available for only 3 payments of $99.95. At the end of his training, he was given a thick binder brimming with every question and concern he might receive and the steps to resolve them. Panicked, Trevor opened his bottom desk drawer after pushing aside bags of Little Debbie's pulled the binder out. "Mary, please hold," he said. He knew the music playing would be an instrumental version of the Ghostbusters theme song. Inappropriate, yes, but if you can't laugh at death. He didn't know how to finish that statement. Maybe there really wasn't anything that funny about it. He flipped to the table of contents and scanned the column. Age and its effect on our perception of ghosts. Alzheimer's, a gateway to the other side. Arthritis, is a ghost trying to hold your hand? Line 1 was blinking. It was always Trevor's goal to not let the song play through twice. "Mary, you there?" he asked, crushing the phone against his ear with his right shoulder as he continued to flip through the binder. "Yes, dear," she said calmly. "Okay, based on the information you just provided, I have to ask you a few more questions. Has anyone in your immediate family suffered from dementia?" He held his breath. "Ha, Trevor, my family might be a little unusual, but we're sharp as tacks up till the end," Mary said. "I see where this is going, and I have to stop you right there. I tell you I can't remember when or how my husband died, and you think that makes me some kind of crazy, but I assure you, I'm not. Now you remember the story I told you about the woman in the car at the Piggly Wiggly. You see, Trevor, the reason she knew me, but I didn't know her, is that she was me, all grown up. I've realized something over the last few years, and that thing is, time doesn't work the way we think it does. We're dead much longer than we're alive, and don't you think that if the dead can come and go as they please, that they might travel forward and backward just as much as they travel left and right? They're not stuck, they make choices. I'm calling you tonight because my husband is dead before his time. He is dead somewhere a few years down the line, and that ghost of his is living inside of him right now, and it won't get out. Now you tell me, what are we supposed to do about that?" Mary asked. Trevor hugged the binder to his chest. If he were a cartoon, his speech bubble would be a series of exclamation points. "I'm sorry," Trevor said, "but I want to ask you one more thing, and you don't have to answer unless you want to. Did you and your husband have a good marriage before all this started? Were you happy?" He put the binder back in the desk drawer. The red-headed intern was wide-eyed and mouthing, "What's going on?" "Yes, Trevor, we were happy. You wake up next to the same person for 40 years, and you know when they're really there and when they're not. You know there's a difference between the turtle and the shell," Mary said. The hair was standing up on Trevor's arms, and when he closed his eyes, there was nothing but darkness. He swallowed hard before answering. "Mary, at this time, I can't offer any more assistance. You will be contacted by one of our paranormal specialists within the next 48 hours. Until that time, we ask that you do not speak of this to anyone else. We ask that you remain calm. If the situation escalates, we urge you to leave your home, and we will provide you with a safe space until our highly trained investigators are able to isolate and correct the problem. Do you have any questions?" "Yes, just one," Mary said. "Do you believe me?" Trevor's replacement had just arrived. Another 20-something